Podcast excellence since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network, kingofpodcasts.com.
I guess TNA wasn't bound too much with their NXT exchange.
Woo! Hey, this is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence, the King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents The Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Yes, it's the Wrestling is Real podcast, and my TNA Bound for Glory recap here on the program. Thanks for tuning in, finding the shows you always do, kingofpodcasts.com, where you can find it, of course, on my YouTube channel. And you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. And everything you can find on how to find the show, social media, all of it. And how you can also donate to the program through PayPal, Cash App, or buy me a coffee. You can do it right now at kingofpodcasts.com. Any way you can support would be awesome. So another TNA pay-per-view of the Big Four, closing out the year of TNA. As TNA once again with Bound for Glory tonight, with the lineup, the roster they have, it's just been very much kind of like staying very steady, nothing real risk taking this year. You have a good collective of veterans. You're still working with quite a few stars that have been being built up for a long time now that are TNA originals, and you're looking through what they're doing now. This iteration of TNA, it kind of feels like what Ring of Honor is right now with Tony Khan. It's like you got good stars there, but is it really moving the needle for themselves? And I think that's the part they haven't been able to do too much of. But they're working on things. And the most important thing in their booking is that they are not risk-taking. They're not willing to go ahead and push the envelope on their booking. Thus, we took a long time for Masha Slamovich to go ahead and win the Knockouts title. It also comes down to the fact that Joe Henry gets another shot at the World Heavyweight title. Doesn't get it, but there's a lot of plunder. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But in the meantime, you have a lot of veterans that are out there helping to go ahead and establish other stars with Moose and Mike Santana tonight. And the continuation of having Speedball Mike Bailey being one of those rock stars that he always will be happy to go and put into that first match to start the night off and really set the pace. And there's just other matchups that they just try to put together, trying to build off of, trying to make something of it. So here's what we got right now as of tonight. I wasn't as impressed with this Bound for Glory as I have previous years because of some of the stars they had. But, I mean, in this current age, it's tough for TNA to go and bring in new talent and go ahead and try to kind of freshen up the roster because of who they have. Now, early in the year, getting into TNA and starting off for the year, when we look at the past pay-per-views we've talked about on the program, you got to go back and look back where Hard to Kill, Speedball Mike Bailey getting the X Division title in an Ultimate X match, standing out right there. Josh Alexander coming back, trying to redeem himself, but then, of course, we know that he turns on the Joe Henry, and then there's a short program with them within the time between Rebellion going into Bound for Glory, all that going on. You had Spitfire, so the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Champions, and what they've been able to do right now, from being brought together to being the champions as they have been. Masha Slamovich being part of the system, breaking free and setting herself on her own. And there's been a constant evolution of Masha Slamovich from where she first came in to where she is now, where they've normalized, taken her gimmick and they've kind of opened it up to let her be more of herself, to make her very formidable to Jordynne Grace, and to give her the chance to win. Then you have the system that was very much a reign of terror. And you go back where, you know, Bound by Honor and all that kind of stuff, the other faction of another faction of another faction. There's always has to be one of those. So the system's been here, and it's I mean, not doing too much now. I mean, hell, they don't have any belts at this moment as we speak. Then you have PCO, and he's been a focus a lot. Digital media champion, international heavyweight champion. The whole storyline with him and Steph DeLander, the marriage, and Matt Cardona, and the whole setup to that. Then you get Nic Nemeth, who makes his way to become TNA World Heavyweight Champion in that 6-way match. That is also where we have the turn from Josh Alexander to go heel on Joe Hendry. Then you had the Hardys coming back at Slammiversary, and they worked their way up and to become World Tag Team Champions again. And then Joe Hendry, we know that he has been up and moving up into the ranks, but also within that main event title picture. So a lot of the tribalism, right? The fandom out there of mostly WWE fans that will, and I actually know the ones I talked about, the marks that we talked about, they are all upset tonight because they thought, well, why didn't Joe Hendry win the title this time? I predicted he was going to win, but they're not ready to pull the trigger on him because they decided to bring in JBL. So John Layfield right now has gotten viral again because he's making his way into other organizations. I think, what was he? He was at Maple Leaf Pro, right? He was in MLW. And was he in GCW as well? I mean, he has made his run around. I don't know where it all comes from, but he's like kind of going the Matt Cardona way, going like picking off different independents. And now he's here. And, you know, he's just like this, the outlaw right here. Not much, nothing's been said. He's just coming out looking like Sid from the 2000s or late 90s with Judge Jeff Jones and ECW. He just comes out, you know, here's the clothesline from hell. That's it. But we're not getting anything else out of him. Not much. And I'm guessing that's who Joe Hendry's next target is that he's going to have to go ahead and deal with either JBL, and then, you know, maybe Frankie Kazarian is going to have to go ahead and be dealt with a turning point because eventually he has his Call Your Shot Gauntlet trophy that he's going to be able to cash in. And he tried to cash it in after winning it earlier in the night on the Countdown show. And Kazarian also winning in a cheap fashion, among other things. And the NXT influence that we were wondering how much there was going to be at this show. Well, it's not much. I mean, we did have Brindley Reese and Zaya Brookside. Well, Zaya Brookside is here in TNA, but Brindley Reese was part of a match against Ash by Elegance and Heather by Elegance. Set up that match in the Countdown show. But now nothing was said about who was going to be part within. I mean, you could say, well, the Rascals were in it because you did have Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel in the match. It's also fortunate where Hammerstone was in this match. It's just not been used well. I don't know what it is. It just hasn't used them really well. In the Call Your Shot match, you have Tasha Steelz also make it into the match. That was interesting. Jonathan Gresham's still there, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what they're going to be doing with him. AJ Francis also involved, but it's like, you know, just a ragtag. But Kazarian now has the Call Your Shot trophy and can cash in any time. So when we get into the matches, let me tell you, Speedball Mike Bailey and El Hijo del Vikingo, fantastic. Like there was, what was it off the apron? Like a destroyer off the apron. It was just like right off the top rope and then down. And I was like, what in the world? Some of the stuff they were doing right now, which is ridiculous what they were doing. Incredible. But also great match. Mike Bailey gets the win and continues to be strong. And I've also seen where he's worked he also worked at Maple Leaf Pro, which is nice. It's Scott D'Amore and the relationship they have where there can be certain stars, kind of like where that Ric Flair's last match kind of scenario was, where Scott D'Amore's getting from multiple promotions to go and come in and work at their shows. And I know I still got to go and watch that Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling pay-per-view they had last week, and I haven't had a chance to go and catch it, but I have to go and pull it back up and look at it. They did have NXT presence when it comes to Wendy Chu and Rosemary in a Knockouts Tag Team title match. I think Wendy Chu now being used to TNA, and someone like Rosemary who's been around for so long working on her character, going back to 2016, I think it is. I think Rosemary taking her and mentoring her into basically how Sue Young was built up, basically how Havoc was built up. Rosemary's good for this right here. And if they're going to try to create this dark, brooding character for Wendy Chu, yes. I think seeing right now Rosemary turn on Wendy Chu and kissing her on the forehead after spearing her and seeing those two work together, let's see how they work out of that. Because you would have to figure Wendy Chu has to go ahead and come out winning out of that whole scenario. Let's see what they do with that. It's something, but for Rosemary, it's good to have somebody else to come into the fold so that that kind of storyline can still continue. Because, I mean, that's her niche. And for TNA, they always have to have that dark, brooding niche. Somebody has to be in there to do that. It's part of their thing. They've always had that for years now. Even well before Billy Corgan had been in the company for a while with Dixie Carter, and they had kept that going, well after the post-Spike TV days. Let's just say it like that. The Pop TV days. There you go. Into Pursuit, into Destination America, and whatever else. God, those are some runs. Let me tell you what. Yeah, Josh Alexander, Steve Backlund, and these two guys kind of just feel like in the middle. I wasn't necessarily over much of this. Again, two former champions. What do you do with them? That's one of those things where I feel like with TNA, when they do bring somebody up, they get titles, and it's like to get them back into something where I'm really invested in feuds. I mean, I haven't seen too many feuds that I've been invested in where I catch myself going over to watch TNA on Thursday nights. It's hardly hard enough to go ahead and make sure to go and tune into their show without having a straight stream to go to and having to go find somewhere else to go find it and watch. It's always kind of tough. The PCO Matt Cardona stuff, that's very well built out to build up to that. Matt Cardona formerly really holding on and taking property of Steph DeLander and that whole setup. And the whole PCO Steph DeLander thing, they've built that wedding storyline for a long time. Dare I say probably better than they did with NXT with Dexter Lumis and Eddie Hartwell. Just saying me. And PCO wins over Matt Cardona. Continues to stay Digital Media Champion, International Heavyweight Champion. Also, crazy match at a Monsters Ball match. Mike Santana, trying to see him here in the mix here as a singles competitor. They give him Moose and JDC also being involved in the match to try to get a little bit of plunder. But for the most part, I look at Mike Santana and it's like they need to add something more. I mean, we've heard the story. Look, when we first brought him into the company after his AEW contract finished up, I'm still trying to get into him as a single star and have him stand out. I wish he had more of a gimmick for himself than just Mike Santana. I know that's where we're coming from with that, but I wish there was something more to him that was more of a gimmick just to kind of have him stand out. I mean, he's good out there, but it's like, I know they're going to work his way up the ladder. I don't know. They obviously, I guess, don't look at him as an X Division star. So it's like World Heavyweight title, or he has to go after, I mean, not with PCO being out there because Mike Santana is the face. I don't know where you go with him next. Like, do you go with him to the X Division? Do you go after him into the World Heavyweight title picture? He's not going to be World Heavyweight title picture yet because you still got to see where Joe Henry's going to come out of things. You still got to see what Kazarian's going to be doing when he cashes in. What Nic Nemeth is going to do. They got a lot of things circling around the World Heavyweight title. We just got to kind of figure out what they're going to do. Now, the match I thought was most impressive was Masha Slamovich, Jordan Grace. These two are heavy hitters. They're haymakers. They had a really great match together. A lot of strength out of both of these stars. Let's put it like that, too. These two are very strong, very physical. This was really the match I really enjoyed the most of the night. And Masha Slamovich becomes World Knockouts champion over Jordan Grace. Big deal here. And a story that's 2 years in the making, the way they set it up. And they waited to go and make sure that you got to this point where we evolved the character to where she is now. That works. I felt good about it. Nic Nemeth continued to hold on to the TNA World Heavyweight title 3 months in. They're not ready to take the belt off of him. I can see that. I can understand that why. But I could also understand if they were going to go to Joe Henry. Sure, people are disappointed. I'm sure people are a lot disappointed. But they had a lot of plunder in the match because for Joe Henry, they want to continue to keep putting competitors in front of him. And there is, I can understand the booking, and I can see where there's more time to be patient and give Jim Henry some more time to chase, because the chase is good for him. Another 3 months, like if you want to come ahead and say, okay, in January, they're going to bring back Genesis. That'll be the next big pay-per-view. If you want to go ahead and bring it there, and then you start off 2025 with Joe Henry winning the World Heavyweight title, I could see that. But they want to go through a couple other stars he has to deal with. So dealing with Kazarian still, dealing with JBL, veterans on veterans, and just continue to build on the guy, I get it. But you can't assume that what he did in NXT should warrant any reason to rush the belt on him. Because that's the part where if it was WWE or NXT, they would probably rush the belt on him. Because in the current day right now, I do believe that Triple H and Shawn Michaels, the booking they have right now, they are rushing the belts. They do have a feeling where if the fans are pushing to make them the champion, they're going to do it. Because I think they really feel that way right now with Gunther and Cody Rhodes. And when they let Jey Uso win the IC title, and when they let LA Knight win the US title, I think that the response is a little bit trigger happy on the WWE side. Meanwhile, Tony Khan kind of goes his own way, and maybe he might hold off on his own, but I think he wants to go where he wants to go with that. And I was surprised this match was not the closer, but I understand why they didn't do that, because Full Metal Mayhem, they set it up where you saw that the Hardy designed mat for the match, the apron for the match, and a lot of plunder going on in this match. Again, Jeff Hardy, another ladder spot. The guy hits his head on the ladder while he's going through a couple of tables. I just don't get how this guy continues to keep going through. He doesn't have CTE yet. It's amazing how they keep going with it, but he came out of it okay. And the Hardys win. Hardys win the triple threat. I would have thought ABC would have won this out of here just in the main run of it, but no. And when they brought the Hardys back, for what it's going to be for TNA going into next year, they had a nice crowd tonight. The Wayne State University Fieldhouse, basically Detroit, suburban Detroit, right? And for TNA to go out on tour, I think it's important for them that you got Nic Nemeth and the Hardys headlining your shows. So they're going to go with veteran stars to make sure they can fill out some of these significantly bigger size venues. So they're not super small. Like, they're not going 900 fans like they used to in the old days of just doing like TV staging. They definitely want to do more small arenas. Maybe not the level where AEW is doing, but they obviously want to go ahead and start building up to more arenas while they're doing it. That's why they need to go ahead and that's where they're going to rely on the veteran stars to go ahead and put asses in seats. That's where I think they're going with it. And understand, and it makes sense to me, but it is very flat. The Masha Slamovich win, that meant something to me. I thought that was really important and significant. Other than that, there's not much else. And like I said, with NXT now, once we already saw that NXT was going to CW, there's quite a bit of a loss on the wayside for TNA, and whatever little exposure we're getting from it, I don't think it made any difference. And I honestly think that TNA got nothing from this exchange so far. For NXT, it's really more about that they're getting some stars, some chance to go and work with the TNA talent that are just very well seasoned and have a lot of work underneath them. So it gets really just a mentorship. So for Wendy Chu and Rosemary, great. Brinley Reed you want to bring in, or some other random stars coming in, that's fine. Whatever you feel like works. But overall, I mean, the show was a B minus for me. I wasn't necessarily overwhelmed with what they were doing, but I wasn't necessarily disappointed either. Just kind of, so in the middle, but good enough. Like, they didn't give me any matches that I felt like didn't warrant to be on the show. I thought they all put great work into it. The work rate was good. I just want more storyline. But that's like every promotion is kind of suffering on that too, which kind of sucks, but what are we going to do about it? Now, I want to think of one other story that came up because the tribalism that's out there among the fandom out there, they're kind of upset because of a couple days ago on Monday, and I didn't bring this up at all, but Samantha Irvin, who had been announcer for 4 years, specifically on Raw and the pay-per-views, listen, she's great. But we also know that, when she wants to go and belt out the national anthem, we also know that just altogether, there's a lot of talent in that young lady. And she put out a story, it really put out some information because somebody wrote back to her, and this looks like it was over on Instagram. Somebody asked her, made comments about the fact that she didn't necessarily like announcing. It was the role she was given in the company. But she was hopefully trying to go and become a manager or a GM down the line. She wanted to do something more for herself. But she was relegated to ring announcing. Now, we understand why WWE would do that because she was very good at it. But it's not like they have a shortage on finding ring announcers. I'm sure they could find someone else that can come in and do the same as before. So that makes sense, but that's fine. But for her, I understand where she wants to go ahead and do more for herself. So one of the things that came out among all this is that she made the point that she wanted to do more about or for her career. And I know that some of the WWE fans are definitely going to feel like, oh, well, I feel so bad about this because I would have wished she would have stayed around. Right. Well, don't be selfish, fandom. All right. You just can't expect her to go and stay here if she's not somewhere where she wants to be. And so, I have no problem with where she's coming from and how she decides to go and do that route. So she made the announcement. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that she wanted to, join Ricochet somewhere else at another company at AEW. I don't think it's anything about that either. So it was on Monday that she put the announcement out there and also clarified that when people had learned that she was no longer going to be on Raw or on WWE in general, was that she quit, that the initial story from PW Insider was that they were informed hours before this was done, but she confirmed this was not true and that she informed them months ago. Now, she put a wonderful note out, really putting a lot of praise to everyone that was there. And from the initial start of her message, that she says that my time has come to an end as your Monday Night Raw ring announcer. I love you all tremendously, and it does not mark the end of my art. I have a lifetime more to share. There's music, who knows, acting, modeling, whatever she wants. She's a young, beautiful woman, and she's very multi-talented. She has so much more she could be doing with herself. So, to see her take the ambitious risk and going away, I love it. I think it works for her to go ahead and just say, look, she's going to do what she's going to want to do. And I got no problem with that. I think it's really wonderful to go ahead and her decide to say, okay, you know what? I don't want to just be here. I'm not going to just stay relegated to this. I have a lot more I want to do in my career. I have more ambitions, aspirations, and dreams, if you will. So she's going to go on and do what she wants to do. Great for her. I don't feel any kind of onus about the fact that she wants to go ahead and leave. I'm glad she decided to leave if that's what she wants to do. So she did. Good for her. I also got to mention that Bound for Glory had the biggest crowd they ever had since 2013. So significant time for them on how well they were doing this year for their shows, but more importantly, how much they've been able to go and do to sell out. Because it definitely looked like several thousand people that were at that show tonight. Wonderful. So there you go. That is your Bound for Glory recap here on the Wrestling Observer podcast. And we're going to come on back this Wednesday night. And I got comments. Yes, I have comments coming back from what I talked about last week with the issue of the tribalism and how Tony Khan decided to go ahead and really stir the pot because he decided to go ahead and punch down on a particular wrestling podcast. Or you might have heard the clips, you might have heard the episode. Go back and listen to it. But come back this week for another Wrestling Observer podcast. We got comments about it and more commentary. And we're leading up to Crown Jewel. Come back for another Wrestling Control podcast because wrestling needs us.